cool system. And it's just, we put a ton of prayer. This started in COVID. We put a ton of prayer in it then. And I just believe that this is going to be life-changing. So I'm excited. Does anybody remember what we talked about week 1 with David? Anybody have your notes with you? Something that stuck out from that time. Talked about making disciples. Anybody? Yeah.
I just talked about the roles that a disciple maker has and like how they're supposed to like facilitate those.
Yeah. Do you remember some of those roles? Anybody?
Yeah, I've got like they're a teacher, a coach, a mentor, and a model.
Yeah. Sweet, that's good. And that's the basic of what he talked about, right? Like what your roles are: teacher, coach, mentor, model. And then what did Ryan talk about last week? Relationships. Right? Anything you remember about what he said? Yeah.
His graph, like, it just made a lot of sense.
So helpful,
Like,
wasn't
it's
it?
complicated, but then he just broke it down really well.
Yeah, the practicality of like too much, relationship leads to this, but too much challenge leads to this. There's just this happy medium of spending time together, but also challenging. And so I hope you all remember next year as we do this, that you mesh the sacred and the secular, that you spend time with them. I've been telling our mentors and the committee, as we talk about like how you involve community with each other, like they should know your roommates, right? Your pathway students should know your best friends. If they don't, then you've separated something there. So I challenge you, like, hey, like you don't have to separate the two. Like they should be friends with your friends. They should come to your apartment multiple times. You should go to their apartment multiple times. Cool. This week we're going to talk about. We have 4 sessions because we have 4 weeks in the fall of Pathway. So y'all doing session 3 today in y'all's groups. We don't have time to go through session 4, but y'all will go through that in the fall. But I'm going to go through it right now because I feel like it's important. Like it's so important because we're talking about why discipleship, right? Why discipleship? I'm just going to give it to you right now. Why discipleship? For multiplication. Multiplication. Okay, why do we do discipleship? Multiplication. I'm going to go through the ins and outs of that a little bit. Okay, but that was Jesus' heart. That's been the church's heart, and that's our heart too. And somehow I think we honestly miss that in our definitions or whenever we don't know what discipleship is. I'm going to start with 3 misconceptions. 3 misconceptions. The first one is that discipleship is all about the disciple. The first misconception is that discipleship is all about the disciple. Second misconception, the more disciples you have at one time, the better. I'll say that again. The second misconception is the more disciples I have at one time, the better. And then third and final misconception, I must have discipleship down before I start making disciples. I must be good at this whole Christianity thing before I start making disciples. That's the third misconception. Okay? I'm going to read a verse as we talk about the first one. Discipleship is all about the disciple. 2 Timothy 2:2, and y'all are going to have time to memorize this today. This is y'all's scripture from memory, but 2 Timothy 2:2, this is one of the first ones I memorized. And what you've heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. 2 Timothy 2:2, and what you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to faithful men and women who will be able to teach others also. Okay, how many levels of discipleship do we see there? How many layers of generations? How many? Who said it? 4, right? Right, so, and what you have heard from me to you, entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. 4. We started using this in BSM a little bit is I want our leaders to have spiritual grandchildren, right? By the time they leave. Spiritual great-grandchildren, if we're going to go by, 2 Timothy 2:2. I want us to think of that like stories of eternities can do bigs and littles. Why can't we in discipleship? Right? Like I want to know who my spiritual great-grandchild is. I want you, by the time that you leave, to know who your spiritual great-grandchild is. Multiplication, right? And according to this verse, what are we supposed to teach our disciples? And what you've heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, and trust the faithful men who will be able to teach others also. What you learn in discipleship is whatever your disciple is doing, your disciple maker is doing, right? So hopefully they're following Jesus. Hopefully they're reading their Bible. Hopefully they're, getting in the Word. They're part of a church serving. So one thing they're learning is whatever their discipler is doing. And the second thing they're learning is how to pass it on. Okay? How to pass it on. So going still with this topic that discipleship is not about the disciple, I think we can't have that conversation until we talk about Jesus' mission. Jesus' mission, God's mission, our mission. Okay, so there's 3 points. First is that Jesus commissioned us to make disciples. How do we know that? Great Commission. Jesus commissioned us to make disciples. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teach them to obey everything that I commanded you. Surely I'm with you always to the very end of the age. So what is this commission? It's not to go preach necessarily, right? It's not to go have a lot of coffee with someone. It's not to do your best to go to seminary. It's not to be a religion major or any of these. Therefore, as you go, I think David talked about this, the emphasis here is make disciples. So we've all been commissioned to make disciples, not just mentor mentees. Go make disciples. Second, so you've been commissioned to make disciples. Second, Jesus' commission is urgent. Jesus' commission is urgent. Some people don't like that. It's like, hey, just live, abide. Yeah, yes, let's live, abide. But Jesus, in Romans, Paul says this, Romans 10, 14 and 15. How then can they call on the one that they have not believed in? And how can they believe in the one whom they have not heard? And how can they hear without someone preaching to them? And how can anyone preach to them unless they're sent? As is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring the good news. How are they going to know unless someone tells them? Do you know the world's population right now? Almost 8 billion. 7.8. Yeah, 7.8 billion. 7.8 billion. Do you want to know how many people have no access to Jesus? Meaning, we use the term unreached people. How many people in the world have no one going and sharing the gospel with them? Have no one in their area, no access to Jesus? We have 42% of the world's population with no access. Right? That's right? That's over 1/3. Over 1/3 of the population has no access to Jesus. And to give it a number, that's 3.29 billion people who will go to hell when they die because no one is going and telling about Jesus. And you may not like hearing this, and I don't like saying it, but I'm going to say it again. 3.2 billion. 3.2 billion people are going to go to hell when they die because no one is sharing the gospel with them. Does this bother you? We don't know this number. This should keep you awake at night. We should weep over this in our prayers. This breaks the world's heart. I know because whenever we go to beach reach or we do mission trips or we talk to people, I have people all the time saying, if you have a loving God, then why are people, and you believe other people on the other side of the world are going to go to hell because they don't know Jesus? That doesn't sound like a loving God to me. Why would he do that? You know what the answer is? God's mad at that too. His heart breaks at that too. Why? Because he's been telling us for over 2,000 years to go to them. Discipleship is not about the disciple. It's not about the person you're about to mentor and pour your time into. Discipleship is about the kingdom's growth. It's about multiplication. It cannot just be about the person you're pouring into. They need to know that it's about more than them. They need to know that the nations will not hear unless you go. There's places on this campus where no one is involved in ministry, no one's involved with the gospel. So those people will also not go to heaven unless someone tells them about Jesus. So your discipleship cannot just be about your disciple. It has to be about more. Okay, so that's the first misconception. It's not about discipleship, it's about multiplication. It's about their disciples who make disciples who good. Okay? Second misconception, the more disciples that you have at one time, the better. And a lot of us, like I work with students all the time, and I've got someone who's like not discipling anybody, I got one who's discipling 12. It's like, are you Jesus? You know, like, what are you doing? Right? But they're like, the more I have, the better, right? I can do this. Like, the more people I have, the better. Misconception. I have to turn my paper over. Addition versus multiplication. Addition means, imagine you, one person, were able to lead 1,000 people to Christ every day. That'd be pretty incredible, right? One person leading 1,000 people to Christ every day. At the end of a year, you would have led 365,000 people to Christ. And that looks pretty impressive as well. That's 3,655,000 after 10 years. 9,125,000 people after 25 years. Do you know how many years it would take for you to reach the population of the world? 21,369 years. If you're going with addition, you doing 1,000 people a day, it would take 21,369 years if we go with that model. Now let's go to multiplication. You share the gospel with one person, and you spend 1 year training that person up. At the end of that year, you would have 2 disciples, right? You and that person. Then the 2 of you go out, and you find 1 person each, and you spend the rest of that second year training them up. At the end of the second year, you'd have 4. At the end of 10 years, you'd have 1,024. At the end of 25 years, there would be 33,555,432 disciples. Now, how many years do you think it would take to reach the world's population at that point? 33. 33 years of you investing in one person for a year. It would take 33 years to get to that 7 billion people. Misconception is, I need to have more people that I'm pouring into. Look, you could pour into 1,000 people a day, and it still wouldn't make much effect. You pour into one person well in a year, one person well, we can reach this world. That's what we're doing here. Discipleship is meant to be intentional with a few, not half-hearted with many. Okay? Are we on the board of multiplication here? Not addition, it's multiplication. Okay? And then the last one, I must have discipleship down before I start making disciples. I shared this with a lot. If you were a Pathway leader last year, you heard this. I said multiple times. I'm going to say it again because it's such a good quote, right? A guy named William Glasser said that we learn 20% of what we hear and 95% of what we teach. I'll say that again. We learn 20% of what we hear and 95% of what we teach. That means a lot of you are probably only getting 20% of what I'm saying right now. But at the end of next semester, you're going to get this. 95% of you. Right? Because a lot of us have sat in church and done the listening thing our whole lives and never really stepped into discipleship. Because I wasn't ready. Because I've only learned 20% of it. I'm not ready. It's time that you step into discipleship. Maybe you feel unqualified. Cool. Show them how to be an unqualified Christian who is redeemed by the grace of Jesus. Maybe you're still trying to figure out reading the Bible. Cool. Bring your Pathway students with you as you're trying to figure out reading the Bible. Maybe you don't know the answer to all the questions. That's fine. Let them search the scripture with you. Let them see you scrolling through Google of like this question. You don't have to have this down. Y'all are running partners, right? You don't need to be winning the race to disciple someone. So if you have this in you, like, I shouldn't be doing this, is not me. I need to get better before I can pour in. It's no, yes, you need to get better, but you need to be pouring in while you're doing that. Does that make sense? So do not believe the lie. And in the middle of this, do not think, I need to step out because I'm a screw up. You're never going to not be a screw up. And I promise you, the people you're discipling need to hear that too. And they need you to be honest about it. Okay? you will never be an expert at discipleship. The important thing is that you keep growing as a disciple and you invite your disciples into that growth. The tool you're going to have at the end of that session is we're going to teach you a thing called an oikos map. We're going to talk about it today in just practicality. An oikos map, you'll have it on your page. An oikos map is made of two things, right? The way that we do it, it's made of two elements. You have a circle. I'll draw big here. I can't draw big. You have a circle, that's you in the middle. Have y'all done this already? No? And then you have three people that you're praying for to come to know Jesus. Circle, three circles here. People you're praying to come to know Jesus. Okay? And then in the next one, y'all can't see it, but there's also squares. Okay? Squares are people that you're praying for to disciple. People you're looking for to be your running partner. Right? And you're going to be given people in Pathway. So I want you to know who those people are. And I want your mentor, the people who's discipling you, to know who that is so they can pray for you. Right? But we need to keep looking at, hey, who are the people around me that I need to be pouring into? People who don't know Jesus, and who are my running partners? People I'm just inviting with me as I read my Bible, right? As I go and invest in this people right here, or as I go partner with Mission Waco, or as I go to church, or whenever I go make food at my house, or spend time with my roommates, like that's what I'm doing with my squares, my disciples, right? I want us to pray about that. But most importantly, we need to know that God's plan for reaching the nations is discipleship. God's plan for reaching the nations is discipleship. So I'm going to leave you with this. Whenever you're done with Pathway, actually from the beginning, from your session 4, whenever you do this with them, your week 4, because we expect you guys to not just end at the end of our program of 4 weeks. I expect you to do this for the semester or a year or 4 years. I don't know. This cannot end. You can't just do discipleship in 4 weeks. Not do it well. But by week 4, you should be telling them, hey, this isn't about you. I know a lot of people get this misconception that I need to meet with you and I need to spend more time with you and it needs to be about your problems and issues. Yeah, we can talk about your problems and issues. Like, I love you, so I care about that. But you need to know that next year you need to have a little, right? You need to have someone that you're pouring into. Because that's the only way we're going to reach the world. And some of you are going to be called to go to those 3.2 billion people. Some of you sitting here, you may not have known it till today. Some of you are going to go to those people who have no access to Jesus. You know how I know that? That's the reason why I'm here right now. I so badly want to be on the other side of the world talking about Jesus to someone who doesn't know them. But God gave me a vision. You're going to send hundreds to the nations rather than you going. Some of you, many of you, I pray, will go and your disciples will go. So pray with me, and we'll do our session. Father, we love you. Father, I pray that we don't stop thinking about those who are going to spend eternity away from you.